And starting off with the rest of our program, we're going to provide an update on Romain Grosjean. And on Wednesday morning, Romain Grosjean was released from the hospital. Sunday after grid live post race, it was confirmed that Grosjean had suffered no fractured bones. Very shocking, but good news following such a horrific crash. Minor burns on the outside of his hands, and Grosjean actually released a video thanking everyone for their support and calling the Halo device the greatest thing in Formula One. And the last time we were on the air, we were still processing everything that happened only hours ago, and everything was so fresh and raw. Now, several days later, what are your current thoughts about Grosjean's crash?
Definitely with Grosjean's crash and now having a couple days to process it, it's really just gotten to the point where I feel like, okay, the shock, especially if I was explaining to somebody watching the event Sunday, I can still remember the shock, the emotions went through. Now I am starting to be finding myself more focused on the upcoming race weekend, following all the motorsports news. Is definitely something where, as we're proceeding on, I feel like, time heals and definitely we're moving forward. It is very interesting though, because we do get the reminders, especially this week. It was on Monday, NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. Rarely do they talk about Formula One. Here they were showing the footage of Romain Grosjean talking about it. So we're seeing more of the exposure from the crash that's gaining attention from the media that traditionally doesn't follow motorsports. And at first it was just something where it kept bringing back some of the emotions. I know Monday I was still in that shock, couldn't believe it happened, where now I feel like I'm accepting it more that this is what happened Sunday. Roman's thankfully out of the hospital, and we got another race to cover this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the crazy thing about how everything works out. You see a crazy, scary crash like that, but at the end of the day, you have to move on and move forward. Yeah, and the day after the crash, I was still, looking at all the images and videos online, just still shocking disbelief, trying to dissect the accident and still thinking, how in the world does a Formula One car crash through an Armco barrier and split in half with the fuel cell igniting a large fire like that? It's still mind blowing right now thinking about it. But at the end of the day, really glad to see Roman Grosjean released from the hospital and looks like he's going to be okay. And and if he wants to, be able to continue racing. And we know many others are still sharing their feelings and expressing such great relief about it that Grosjean's all right. And we also know many are also expressing the displeasure of the images from the crash being rebroadcasted all over the internet. And this includes Daniel Ricciardo, who is furious at FOM for showing the replay over and over again. And the images of Grosjean's crash made the front page of many newspapers all over the world that generally don't even feature Formula One or motorsports in general. And Joe, in the world of journalism, is there a fine line between what's acceptable and unacceptable to post on an ethical level?
That's a really great question, especially since we see the images in journalism that doesn't cover motorsports traditionally. Now, we do have a comment from a viewer who wrote, "It took time for the crash to settle. It was a big shock, but it settled down after a few days, and the footage of him out of the hospital helped." One of the things, of course, a lot of the media that were covering the news story, they were also showing the videos of Roman Grosjean saying hello, thank you to the fans, and everyone's sending him the best wishes. When it comes to the media and journalism, especially, I feel there is a fine line. Of course, the job in journalism is to report to everyone on the news story. This was a big news story, no doubt about it. As you mentioned, the shock of the modern day Formula One car exploding like that. This is something that, if you watch Formula One in the 70s, it was a bit unfortunate to say. It was common to see a Formula One car in the 70s catch fire and be engulfed in flames like that. One of the things as well too, this is definitely a story that, while we hate to be talking about a serious crash where somebody got hurt, but they're back hopefully racing again, it's a better situation than saying the story of we had a serious crash and the driver didn't perish. It will still get the same media attention, but for much more of the wrong reasons. And this is definitely something where I know later on in the future episode, Great Tonight, we're going to be with Brett Frum right here on the Grid Network, as he's going to talk a little bit about some of the things when it comes to motorsports journalism, especially for aspiring journalists.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be exciting having Brett Winningham on our program from Speedway Digest, a great young motorsports journalist who knows a lot about the world of journalism and particularly ethics. Yeah, I think all of our viewers out there who are interested in motorsports journalism, Brett's definitely gonna has some great resources for you coming up. And following the aftermath of Grosjean's crash, the primary focus that people have been looking at are one, the car penetrating through the Armco barrier, which honestly, should not happen at all. I'm still in shocking disbelief that I saw that with my own eyes and everybody else did too. And number two, the car split in half, and we're really lucky that the survival cell did its job and helped Roman Grosjean survive that accident. And along with the Hans device, keeping his neck in place, and then the halo. If you look at that Armco barrier, that the Halo did exactly what it was supposed to do. And also number three, the fuel cell at night, and you definitely don't want to ever see that happen. It's still chilling going back and looking at that video of Roman Grosjean emerging from the fire. It's like something that you see from an action movie or something. That was just one of the wildest things that I've ever seen in my years of watching motorsports. And Joe, with all that being said, is there more to the story, and what type of changes should the FIA consider in terms of safety?
Definitely, there's a lot more to the story. And one of the things that is, of course, part of any major investigation, the FIA, thankfully, they'll be able to ask Roman Grosjean questions as to why did he make that right turn. A lot of folks are focusing on what happened ahead of him, especially where Lando Norris was, where he got squeezed, everyone checked up. Was Roman thinking, I'm going to try to make a couple passes by going onto the inside, unaware that Daniel Kvyat was right there and they made contact? And then, of course, if they could conclude that this was part of it, the way that wall was angled and the racetrack, unless you had a serious malfunction or this accident where Roman was crossing over and then that made contact with the wheel and hit that wall, this could be somewhere in the future they'll consider, okay, even though vehicles will be exiting this corner, what if we had a repeat of something similar to Roman Grosjean? Do we need this wall this close? That wall was so close, it didn't allow a lot of time for Roman Grosjean's car to slow down. So this definitely could help Formula One when it comes to, okay, let's look at where the inside, outside walls are, project where the vehicle's trajectory coming out of the corner is, but also anticipate in case something like what happened to Roman Grosjean was to occur, and all of a sudden you have a vehicle at a much shorter distance heading towards a guardrail.
Yeah, and once again, the FIA said they're doing a deep investigation. I repeat, a deep investigation. I like the sound of that because I know they're going to be taking this very seriously, and we're definitely going to be following the investigation, reporting on any updates that come out from the FIA. And as we know, Roman Grosjean will not compete at the Bahrain Outer Circuit this weekend, or what they're calling the Almost Oval. However, he hasn't been ruled out yet to race in the season finale in Abu Dhabi, and it really seems like he's recovering nicely from this scary accident. And it would be such a shame if that frightening crash turns out to be his final moment with Haas and in Formula One in general. With his future up in the air, doesn't look like he's going to be on the grid next season in F1. But we'll wait and see if he's cleared to race in the season finale. And test reserve driver Pietro Fittipaldi is taking his place with the Brazilian driver, making his Formula One debut. And it's certainly been an interesting career for the grandson of Emerson Fittipaldi. He started off his career in stock car racing and won the track championship at Hickory Speedway in what is now called the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series. Then he went over to Europe and pursued an open wheel racing career on the path to Formula One. And recently he competed in series such as the NTT IndyCar Series part time in 2018, and last year a full season in DTM. Now a test and reserve driver for Haas F1 who got the call. What goals should Pietro Fittipaldi set for his Formula One debut, especially since this could be one of the very few opportunities that he'll ever get to race in a Grand Prix?
Additionally, the big thing is bring the car home in one piece. Try to make the best finish as possible. Of course, with Haas, they've been running in the back. If he could score points, that would be huge. This race, especially the almost oval, where they're anticipating sub-minute laps, that slipstream, if he can have a really good setup, get really comfortable in the car, I could see maybe a 10th or a ninth place finish. We don't know how crazy that race is going to be. We could see where we might have a lot of vehicles not finish the race. Keep your nose clean, put in lap after lap, and try to make the best of it. My goal would just be to finish, and if you could get a 10th place or a ninth place, that would really exceed expectations. And the fact that we got this almost oval race, I think could really work to his advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I think it could work to his advantage as well. And with Pietro Fittipaldi, looking at the way things are going with Haas, we'll get into the Haas 2021 lineup a little bit later in the program, but with the way things are looking, it looks like his path to Formula One is going to be closing soon. So I think yeah, should go out there and do the best job he can. Also, at the same time, I think he should just have fun because we don't know how many more opportunities he's going to get to drive a Formula One car. Roman Grosjean might be back for the season finale in Abu Dhabi, and Fedopaldi might only get one start in Formula One. So yeah, so I think he definitely needs to go out here, make the most of it, and if Grosjean isn't able to go at Abu Dhabi, Fittipaldi gets another opportunity, then that's great for him. Go out there and enjoy that as well. Yeah, kind of reminds me of the time when Alexander Rossi got to make a few starts in Formula One for the Manor operation. Yeah, and although Rossi, that wasn't able to stick around in Formula One for a long term, but he still got to achieve his dreams and be a Formula One driver. And I'm sure when the lights go out and away we go, as they say, Pietro Fittipaldi is definitely going to remember that moment forever because on Sunday he's going to be a Formula One driver competing in a Grand Prix. And going back to Roman Grosjean one final time, we all know that crashes like his are life changing, and it really puts many things into perspective. We know Roman is married with kids, a family who almost lost a husband and a father. And Grosjean is rumored to be a finalist for a seat at AJ Foyt Racing in IndyCar. And we learned from Marshall Pruitt's recent update, he's also spoken to Delcorn Racing as well. So Grosjean definitely has options in IndyCar if all things turn out correctly. And although he has been open minded about ovals recently, we know they can produce some pretty scary crashes. And after the Bahrain incident, I'm wondering if Grosjean wants to continue taking the risk of getting behind the wheel of a race car. Do you see him continuing his racing career after the Bahrain incident, or will he decide to call it quits and focus on family life?
That's a very good question. Definitely is just something where if Roman wants to continue racing, whether it's Formula One or IndyCar, he should definitely. Well, of course, for racing drivers, they are in a essentially a class of their own when they're in such a high level where they could put the past behind them and continue racing. With that said, though, it was interesting in Roman's interview that he did this week. He said that he was where he faced death, and one of the things he talked about was with his experience, he's definitely going to be seeking to get some help, which I think is really good because we all know we've been talking about mental health. You he just nearly died in a crash, and I think for him to be public and say, "Hey, I'm going to take care of myself so I can continue racing," that includes my mental health. I think that's really brave of him to say, and definitely, of course, we support him in making sure he is healthy, physically, mentally, and ready to race again. If he was to decide, "Hey, I had a good career, I love my family, I love my kids, and I want to spend more time with them," we everybody I think will support that. It is Roman's decision to decide whether he wants to race or not. I personally would love to see him again at Abu Dhabi making one final Formula One start. If he decides to go into IndyCar 2021, everybody will be excited to see him. We'll welcome him. Of course, definitely we'll be looking forward to seeing him run IndyCar if that's his decision. And that's a decision we will respect.
Yeah, Joe, you absolutely nailed everything right there, all the points. And at the end of the day, no matter how you feel about these type of situations, it's Roman Grosjean's decision ultimately. If Grosjean wants to continue pursuing a Formula One career, wants to go race in IndyCar or endurance racing at Le Mans, then he should do that. But after this crash, as I mentioned, these type of crashes are life changing, and it makes you think about things that you probably never thought about before. And if he looks at everything and decides that they'll be like, wow, my almost lost my wife and my kids, and and they were gonna go on without me. And if he decides that he wants to, not race again and wants to just focus on being there for them, that's something that I'll totally respect. I think a lot of people ultimately will end up respecting that because it's his decision, it's his life, and his racing career, and whatever is next for Roman Grosjean, I'm sure his next decision is going to make him very happy.